right, Elena, thanks so much for being here. Very excited to have this conversation. So let's just dive right in. So your focus has been with your podcast, EVs for Everyone, and you're on, as we just were talking about previously before we got on air, your insane speaking schedule, because people are really relying on you to help them, share information about this. But why is this whole concept of electric vehicles, why is it still so overwhelming for both consumers and the automotive industry?
Yes, it is. Overwhelming is the understatement of the century here, but it doesn't need to be. So, Glenn, thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan of your show, so this is an honor. So, again, thank you for the invitation. But yes, it is at times a little bit like drinking from the fire hose. You got all this information, especially with all of the headlines that are coming out all the time, day after day. And it's a little bit difficult to sift through fact versus fiction, which is why I do a lot of myth busting on the EVs for Everyone podcast, because I think it's important for everyone in the entire in the automotive retail ecosystem, in addition to people that might be a little bit EV curious and wanting to find out more. Does an EV fit my lifestyle? So sifting through all of those pieces of information that we're constantly bombarded with. I know every time I open, Twitter, X, or my LinkedIn feed, there, another article that's been written, another YouTuber is mad at Fisker, or you know what I mean? So
right.
there's so much content out there. But I think at the end of the day, and I just did another episode with Mickey Anderson, who's the president of Baxter Automotive Group, and he's an amazing guy. He's really, really articulate. He actually was one of the dealers that spearheaded the letter to President Biden on let's tap the brakes a little bit on EV adoption, because we're really concerned that maybe EV demand, and that kind of is there enough demand for EVs in order for dealers to sell them, et cetera, et cetera. But I think really out of that conversation that I really wanted to put an exclamation point on is that he said, look, Elena, but dealers are pro EV. It to the extent that the customer wants an EV. I said, that's very interesting. So again, there's a lot of headlines, there's a lot of news. And I think what my role in this crazy, chaotic atmosphere is to have open conversations with people who are making decisions, who are actively on the front lines selling these vehicles, bringing them to market, and understanding all of the pieces of this puzzle. So it's fascinating. There's never a shortage of topics. There's always something to talk about, which is what I love. But I really love to highlight the stories that maybe don't get a ton of coverage, that maybe aren't so sexy or aren't so flashy, but do contribute to this new propulsion system, this new landscape.
Right. And what I love about that is that idea of trying to make sense for people in a practical way. And I agree with you. I think there's always the headlines and, trying to little clickbait article to get somebody on here. But I think, to your point, automotive, I've been doing this now for over 15 years, and we have a tendency, and I've seen this with other topics, is we tend to run to one side of the boat. And I think the manufacturers did this. I think the government did this and said, oh, we're going to all be 50% of all cars are going to be EV by this day. And we throw some date out there, but it just seems that everybody runs to that side. And then we have this thinking process to go, is this really something we can do? And then we backstep, and it just seems we're always running. But to your point, what the gentleman said from Baxter, the demand. So why do you think, with all the conversations you had, why do you think consumers haven't really run to the dealership to say we demand EVs? Where do you think there's still the hesitation?
Well, I think initially it was because electric vehicles were considered this luxury product
Hmm.
for so long, right? And I just did an interview with Jamie Butters from Automotive News, and he did an article or a commentary about how Automotive News no longer considers Tesla a luxury brand,
Yes, I listened to that. I thought that was
right?
a great episode.
And so, I think heading into the market as a new EV buyer, we're getting sticker shock. And they're like, I'm going to pay X, Y, and Z price for this vehicle that I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on the fact that this is going to fit into my lifestyle.
Right.
There's a little bit of that hesitation. And then we kind of get into the conversation of PHEVs, plug-in hybrids, right? Which seem to be getting more traction, right? Because you have the almost this the safety, or I call it the security blanket of the ICE engine that's that's a
Right.
part of the EV. It's like, oh, I got my security blanket, but I can still plug
I can
in
feel
and
good about
commute.
myself. I can feel good about
Right.
myself. Right.
Yes, exactly. And so I think when we dissect it a little bit more, the used prices, especially with the Teslas that are now hitting the used marketplace with these, like, really, quite frankly, affordable prices. We've incentives seem to be still a moving target, but
Right.
yes, they still also come into play. But I think one of the most creative financial mechanisms that have kind of come about recently is that subscription micro lease mechanism, which helps someone who's a little bit EV curious on a budget try out an electric vehicle if that is on their shopping list. And then for the dealer, kind of de-risks the EV, gets it off their books, right? Gets it off the floor plan. They're basically making money on that
Right.
vehicle,
Right.
and they're able to have or the consumer is able to have an extended test drive. So I think those kind of creative mechanisms, which by the way, subscriptions epically failed with the OEMs a couple years
Right.
ago. So I think people have like a bad taste in their mouth. They're like, subscriptions, get out of here. But I think with electric vehicles, there's this new kind of resurgence and new, like, we're giving CPR to this subscription through an electric vehicle, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So
I'm
go
trying to
ahead.
figure out. So, and you said this, and I've always questioned, and it goes back to my comment about running to one side of the boat to the other. It seems like all or nothing. Why more manufacturers didn't go the hybrid route? Because
Yeah.
I know for myself, I travel a lot, and every time I go to the rental car, they keep trying to give me an electric vehicle. And I keep saying no, not because I don't want an electric vehicle. I've just never had the opportunity to really think it through, embrace it, try it to figure out, well, where do I go? And I know other people, I've crossed paths with some fellow industry experts. They're like, oh, Glenn, just all you got to do is put the Charge Point app on your phone and it'll all fit. And I said, I don't have time to even, like, my brain can't handle that right now. So I always wondered why they didn't go more hybrid to ease people in, or that idea that you're saying now, that subscription or taking it out to try it. I just think there's still so much, not fear is the wrong word. They just don't know enough about where to charge, how to charge, all of this range anxiety and things like that to embrace it. And I think that's where dealers could probably, I'd love your opinion on it, where dealers could do a better job of it, providing content to educate their consumer base about all of this.
It's all about butts and seats, plain and simple. There's a story, actually, Savannah Sims, who I'm collaborating with on a number of EV initiatives. She's Sims Auto Group, and she told me
Oh,
this
yeah.
story, and it just resonated with me, and it kind of just it set the vibe of Sales. Okay. So, um, she went to go visit a dealer friend. Dealer friend says, "Oh, I can't move this EV. It's been sitting here. Nobody wants to look like nobody wants a time of day. Everybody's avoiding it like the plague."
Right.
And Savannah's like, "Well, how many miles are on it?" The dealer says, "5."
Right.
5 miles on this car. So it's like, get your team, like, go on the Turo app, get your team in a couple of different, like brand vehicles, get them in the vehicles, have them drive them, butts and seats. Like, I don't know, as a salesperson and as a marketer, for me, that's kind of like, that's a no brainer. Like, you need to experience
Right. You have to figure it out so you
fully.
can explain it to someone.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes,
And also
yes,
understanding your market. I think, as I travel around, I have a lot of dealers, some in the South, and they say, no one here wants this. Where, we're both in New Jersey. Yes, New Jersey.
yes,
We're in a more metro area where people, they look at it, or I have a lot of friends who have an EV as their second car.
right.
This is the car I drive around town. But if I'm going, and I've had these conversations, if I'm driving up to see my friends in Boston, I'm not taking my EV, or I really have to plot it out, or I don't really want to have to stop somewhere to think about where I'm charging, or I have to wait for a while, or does my hotel have a charging port, or do I have to go leave my car in a mall away from? So there's all of this, still this duress because of the infrastructure or understanding about it. But to your point, I love that, is how many times how often has your sales team driven these electric vehicles to be able to explain the features, the comfort, and what they felt from a person to person experience? I think that's a great idea.
And being able to speak from experience is much more powerful than, let me go and do this webinar training that my OEM is making me do.
Right.
What's going to be more powerful?
Well, I think you need to do both of them. But to your point is, when you can say, I've driven it, I had the same fear, I wondered about that too,
Exactly.
or creating
Exactly.
content to lay out a map within 20 miles of the dealership to say, here's all the charging stations. Where do you live? Like literally taking a map out. Oh, you're here. Look, here's 10 different charging stations by, and maybe you have a charging port at the dealership, and you can say, come here, let me show you how easy it is. It becomes understanding what all the fears would be and attacking them one by one through practical application. I think that's a great idea, let alone all the content that you could be creating to help them. But it's the practical, tactical for both sides that's going to help initiate these sales.
And I would also say too, for dealers, as almost like a call to action, is open your mind a little bit. Like, you are not alone in this. There are a ton of people, because I talk to them on the show all the time. There are a
Right.
ton of people out there ready and willing to help you with every part of this journey. So where you're talking about the, hey, where do you live? Where are all the charging? There's companies that will have a kiosk in your showroom, and it'll literally like put in make, model, vehicle of the car. Here's where you can charge. And now, by the way, the Tesla opening up where the supercharger network,
Right.
right? Ford's getting a little bit of a taste of that right now. You get your adapter. Yeah, that's cool. And then, and now, as that's starting to open up a little bit more. So my point there is, there are a ton of people in this ecosystem ready and willing to help, that have technology. Like, let the robots do some of this stuff. Let the robots do some of this heavy lifting. I'm not suggesting let the robots sell the vehicle for you, right? Because nothing, like we said earlier, nothing's more powerful than having that personal experience in that vehicle to like talk you through it. But on some of the more the admin technical things, there are things already in the market that can
Right.
help you with solve those problems.
Right. And I think that's a good point also, going upstream to the manufacturer, to one, provide them, to help them, to guide them, because they have their initiatives, and they have, and there is that inherent, sometimes the battle between the dealer and the manufacturer, of they're pushing this and they don't understand this. And it's true, you might be in an area, but one of those dealers who were in the South who said, I can't, well, they dealer trade those up to New Jersey, where New Jersey says, I can't keep them on the lot. And if you can give them to me, I'll send you something down that I don't need. And so to your point is there is a network, but it is a reality. It may not be coming as fast as everybody said it was going to be. And the gentleman from Automotive News in your latest episode, I liked where he said probably by the end of this decade, into the next decade, into the first half of this century. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think everything's going to be ready. I don't think the infrastructure is there. I don't think the appetite. But one of the points that he made, and you both touched on, which I thought was really important, was affordability.
Yes.
There are no new, let alone EVs. There's very few new vehicles, ICE or otherwise, that are under $30,000. And so now I know Stellantis was struggling with that, and a few others where they're going, even the dealers are going, my cheapest vehicle is almost $40,000, $35,000. That just prices a whole group of people out of the market, let alone an EV. But if that comes to pass, they were talking about the Chinese brands. And I know in Mexico, I have some clients in Mexico, and they're saying they're starting to see some Chinese brands for EVs that are going to be that lower price point, almost as a test market of, we're sort of close to the US. Let's see what happens. I agree with him. If there was an EV that was affordable, like they used to have the Leaf and some of these other, early versions of these that were very economical for the hybrids and everything else in the 20s, I think people would sign up much more, but who has the money to go spend $50,000?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think it's, with the existential threat of BYD coming into the US, regardless of what your personal opinion about that is, it's game over. Like you're coming into the market with a sub 20K vehicle, game over. People are going to go and check it out.
Yep.
They're going to, they're going to justify it in their mind and say, well, the payment's right. It's smoother, quieter, all the benefits there. Oh, by the way, yeah, I got to charge it, but the price is right.
Right. Right. Well, that's going to be the big, and then it's going to be the battle of the infrastructure and will you let them charge and all of that. But put all of that political operational things aside. I agree with you. Someone's going to look at it and say, that accomplishes what I want. I want to feel good. That's why, again, I kept thinking hybrids, if you could have a moderately priced hybrid, it would effectively help people get used to the fact of plugging something in, feeling like they're moving towards it in a comfortable manner. I still have the security of, if for some reason I just have to keep driving, I can always go fill up my tank with gas. But I think there's still that hesitation, where you're fighting, I don't know how to, like, again, I don't understand them. To the point where my young kids, I have a freshman in college and a sophomore in high school. They're almost leaning towards, do I really need a car? And then that idea of sharing a car, to you were saying before, the subscriptions, I think as much as that sort of faded away or was seen as a city, so to speak, issue where you could have the city cars and just park it in, I think that's becoming viable because of the price. Unless it comes down to a point where someone can afford it, they're going to do without it. So, we also have to look at the automotive industry of saying, if you're not going to make economical cars, there's going to be a whole generation of people who say, I'll just do Lyft, I'll do Uber, I'll just do without.
I'll just do without. And I also want dealers to hear this message of, you want to be mobility partners. You want to be mobility partners for your community. And what does that look like? No matter the propulsion system. And like I said, there are financial instruments like a subscription or a micro lease to get people that really need personal transportation, that their livelihood depends on it. Their ability for career advancement depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really want to be that partner in your community, which dealers already do so well, being a part of just making your community a better place. But what better, uh, you know, application of your skills, your know-how, and your talent, which is transportation,
Mm-hmm.
getting people transportation. I'm going way off on a tangent here, but I'm really passionate about it.
No, I love it.
I really feel like dealers, we have the technology. You know what I mean? Like the technology is there. It's just a matter of bringing the technology to the operator, bringing them together and say, this is what's possible. And and just opening the door. And I think I started this episode by saying just open your mind a little bit, because I think back to what we were saying about EVs can be polarizing.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately, like you said, you choose one side or the other, which is unfortunate, right?
Right.
We're talking about a car. Like I know this car is symbolizing so many different things politically in people's minds, but it's like we're talking about a car. Yes, it's a different propulsion system, but open your mind to what's possible,
Right.
and the things that also too, as a automotive community, as an automotive industry, like how can we quote unquote reach across the aisle to, yes, government entities, to other stakeholders, manufacturers? How are we all, again, it goes back to having those open conversations, in a way that's real and not full of jargon and acronyms and things that people don't fully understand. Yes, we know an engineer built that black box charge point, like
Right.
charger, right? But how do we simplify? How do we get all of the jargon out of it and make it accessible? I'll get off my soapbox now, Glenn, but
No, but I like that idea because, you know, some of the dealers that I work with who focus on that and they just try to solve it. Now, some of them had the ability to have maybe 3 different car lots, and one's a buy here, pay here, and one's an independent, and then the franchise, and they can move people through that journey. Or they're constantly looking at saying, I need to have a certain type of vehicle for my market on my lot. So they purposely are out there looking and buying so that they can present that. I think the problem that everyone faces is, one, economic. Is this making me money? 2 is restrictions up and down I sort of go upstream or downstream, you know, and it's a lot to have the courage to be able to do that, to really think about, how do I provide this for my community? What am I providing for the community? And I agree with you. I think dealers get a bad rap because they do more for their communities than a lot of other businesses. They're constantly giving back. They're constantly providing work. They're constantly providing solutions, to your point of helping somebody with mobility. Which let me just pivot, because you touched on mobility solutions. Now, your history, I was looking back through all the places that you worked, and I have one here. Hang on, got my notes. Advanced Mobile Solutions for 7 years, and that was a lot of mobility solutions. And then you moved on to Lyft for a bit, and then, well, 5 years, that's a bit, then Teleperformance. So talk to me about how did you get into this idea of mobility? I know initially a lot of it was geofencing marketing, and that's how, but this idea of mobility solutions, you've talked about it multiple times. For someone who's listening and going, well, that's very broad, what the heck does that mean? Talk to me about your journey and how did you end up where you are right now?
Well, it's a journey that's gone up, down, sideways, all kinds of different directions. But really, the theme of the entire journey has been bringing people together that don't normally talk. I can distill it down into one thing. So I'll use Lyft as an example. So I was part of the team that built out the product where, if you've ever gotten a Lyft from your service advisor, either to or from the dealership,
Mm-hmm.
I helped build that product. So it was early days. It was actually pre-IPO of Lyft and pre-pandemic. We built out this product, and Lyft was like, "All right, cool. Now we got to go and sell the dealerships." I feel like not one person except for me had like dealership experience, right?
Right.
Because prior to that, I was working on a text chat and, like you said, geofencing. So so I raised my hand and said, all right, well, I know something about this. So again, going back to the theme of connecting people that don't normally talk to each other, talking about a Bay Area, Silicon Valley company at the time was still very in its startup
Right.
phase.
Yeah.
Let's go talk to dealers. And dealers were like, and this was still early days of rideshare, and there were a lot of headlines around like all the bad things that were happening with
Right.
rideshare because we've all read them, all the crazy things that happened. And then, we go to a fixed ops director, say, why do I need this? I have loaner cars. I got rental. Like, why do I even need this? So it was bridging the
Right.
two worlds of this very traditional business with this
Right.
newer technology that was, well, we all know kind of what happened with the Lyft and Uber story. We still have rideshare today, right? That's still a thing. So that's how I like really kind of started into like playing in that mobility space. And that's actually where I kind of started into the electric vehicle EV journey. And then kind of parallel, which I promise this story has a point, parallel to what I was doing at Lyft, I was very interested in media. I was interested in content creation and just things things that I didn't have an opportunity to do in my corporate job. So I kind of, at the same time, I started a completely different show. It was called the Side Geek Central podcast. It was all about entrepreneurship.
Right.
Uh, it was actually featured in Forbes for this first show, which was wild because initially I thought, oh, I'm going to just talk about side gigs. I'm going to talk about maybe some rideshare people will listen to it.
Right.
No, I was completely completely wrong. It was entrepreneurs, solopreneurs just starting out trying to get a side gig off the ground. And so I also have a background in entrepreneurship that was pre-automotive. So I started talking about this topic. I loved it. I figured out some ways to make it really popular. And then I got involved with teleperformance, which was more on the customer experience side,
Yep.
AI, working with OEMs and also dealerships. So the skills that I learned on that first show for Side Geek Central, I then it was like my shortcut playbook to
Mm-hmm.
go to the next show because I was like, all right, I know the things I don't want to do. Here are the things that really worked well. And then how can I expand and elaborate on those things that worked really well? And then also really lasered in focus on building community because part of the show, like I said, like back to the beginning of the story, which is all about bringing people together that don't normally talk and building that bridge was so evident in electric vehicles, right?
Right.
It's almost like we were talking about two different languages, two different. I'm speaking English and you're speaking Spanish. It was not uh, computing. So now for EVs for everyone, the momentum was incredible in the past year. I was in the fortunate position to say, do I want to stay in corporate or do I want to really explore what EVs for everyone can be and
Right.
what I know it can be and what it can do? And was fortunate enough to go and follow that the EVs for everyone path, which I'm very happy that I decided that route. And so where I am today is I feel very strongly about continuing these really important conversations around electric vehicles. And I also feel really strongly about building community around not only that topic, but also the idea of being mobility partners and what does that actually mean
Right.
for folks. So that was the Cliff Notes version. I tried to make it short and snappy, but it was not short and snappy at
Listen,
all.
this show is not about short and snappy. That's the thing that people like coming here. We just chat and it goes where it goes. No, but what I really
And
like about that, and I like about your show, is it's very conversational. It's not long where people can get lost in it. It's very focused. It's very informative. And I think the fact that I think you're on a 2 episode a week cycle is that it has stickiness. And I like the fact that it always has a point. Like today, like again, the automotive news, we're talking about Tesla only, and then something else, we're talking about this only. But you're bringing all these people together. And I think being that person who's asking the right questions to say, what exactly does that mean? Trying to demystify the jargon, because, the experts, you don't mean to, but you get caught into the jargon. And as hosts, we have to go, time out. What did that mean? Can we,
right.
or be the person who asked the question, because your audience is going, I have no idea what that's about. But I really like it, and I as you came on the radar, I've been watching from afar, and now literally you're all over the place, everywhere, on everybody's stage talking about it. We're both going to be down at a SodaCon. Yes, this will air before that in May, and talking about EVs. And so I just wanted to get you on because I think you have a great viewpoint on it. The fact that you're trying to demystify this crazy topic, it can be overwhelming for everyone, or people just give up. As you said early on, there's so much content. Now you don't know who to believe. You're listening to, as you said, the angry TikToker or something, and you're going, I don't even know what to believe anymore. And I think it's inherent, in my opinion, on both the manufacturer but the dealer to be that expert in their market to demystify all of this, because people are coming in to say, all right, you're the expert. What is it? And you need your team to be the experts. And I think that's a huge area for those dealers that are listening. If I can leave you, and Elena can leave you with anything, I would say is double down on your content. No question is too simple, break it all down. And the more that you can put, seats out there, get your people in those cars, driving them, testing them, they're going to be the experts.
Absolutely. No. And I thank you, Glenn. Sometimes as a content creator, sometimes you feel like you're screaming into the void. So I very much, I very much appreciate that. I think as we get further and further into this long novel of EV adoption, dealers are on the front lines. They are hearing what customers are saying, and are actively working with people to get them mobility. And EV is just one piece of the puzzle. And I think regardless of whatever the headwinds are for EVs, the reality is that we've got a ton more models coming. So figure it out now. So,
well, to your
not stopping.
Well, to your point, and I think it's a great place to sort of wind this conversation up, is just like you were talking about Lyft. I always joke, and my kids joke, to say, well, when you were young, you were told never to get in a stranger's car. And now we dial up a stranger and jump happily into the car and go, take me wherever you want. Now, back when you were starting with Lyft, no one knew that. They were like, what? Someone's stranger's going to pull up? Who?
Yes.
I'm going to put my customers in here. So if you think about how over the, 5, 6 years, just even that short period of time, maybe even less than 10 years. Yeah, absolutely. Where now it's comfortable and we're mad and we have levels of service now in rideshare, and I want exclusive, and now we're condescending at times to this. My point is that if we look at EVs as what we thought of Lyft 5 years ago, and now how comfortable we are, we have to work that same way to say in 5 years, we and our customers will be much more comfortable, but we have to work at it to help them understand the pros and fight away the cons, or else Lyft and Uber would have disappeared.
Absolutely. And you would be amazed, Glenn. I love that story. You would be amazed at how many objections I had, going into dealers about, I'm not going to put my customer in a stranger's car.
Right.
That was the number one objection.
Of course.
And now, thinking back, I'm just going to have my porter drive them to where they need to go to work, or I have this loaner fleet. And then, oh, by the way, we kind of actually got into the catbird seat when COVID rolled around and nobody had any loaners. And then they were calling me up like, Elena, what was that Lyft thing that you were doing?
Exactly.
Like, so there were some, we were riding that tailwind, whatever. Anyway, might want to edit that out. But anyway,
no, we don't edit. We just leave it all.
Oh no,
because that's you. That's you. We don't edit that.
That's just me. That's me talking. So I think that, yes, to your point, like being comfortable with EVs is a process. It's and I had so I'm gonna call out Craig Quisenberry from ACV. It's an episode with him. It hasn't aired yet, and he made the best analogy I've heard so far. He says, earlier the electric vehicles, we're all on this like very nice flight. We're ascending into the air. Everything's perfect. You're buckled in. You're getting served your drinks and your snacks. Everything is awesome. And then we hit the turbulence.
Right.
The seatbelt sign, goes on. Luggage is flying out of the compartments. Stewardess is like, hang on. So he's like, that's where we kind of are right now with EVs. And so we're hitting a bit of turbulence. But I love that analogy because it's like, we didn't crash and burn and die.
No.
Like the plane is still up, flying its flight path. But at the same time, there's some turbulence.
Well, but but that's where the dealers come in, because I remember being on a very small commuter flight back in the day, and going from small town to small town. So it was literally one of the prop jets.
Oh,
and of course the door to the pilot was open and we were hitting turbulence, and I immediately looked to them, and the two of the pilot and co-pilot just talking like nothing. I'm going, well, if they're not worried, I shouldn't be worried. We're okay. If I start seeing them go, oh my God, what's going on? Then I'm going to be nervous. And I think that's the role of the dealer. That's the role of the manufacturer to say, it's not that it's turbulence. There's just a lot of questions. And you need to be the calming force out there to say, yeah, I know you don't understand it, but let me give you a solution. And that circles all the way back to what we talked about initially is your team needs to be experts on the models, just like you are on every other model. This just might take a little more work, test driving, understanding, having questions where we've already got all the questions done. We know miles per gallon. We know how long, how big the tank is. We know all those answers for ICE vehicles. Now we have to learn them all for EV. So we're prepared so we can be those experts and allay any concerns that the customers have. And then they'll line up if they see the value of it.
I love that analogy. That's so spot on. You just took Craig's analogy and just like and I
just don't like flying I don't like flying suitcases.
But no, it's so spot on. I love it.
All right. So let's I have a couple questions to ask you at the end of every episode. I ask a few questions that just are random. So first one, what is something that you're reading, listening, or watching that is inspiring you that you would share with other people?
Ooh, this is such a good question. So, you know what? I'm really enjoying. First of all, let me just say that I am definitely a podcast addict. So like definitely a string of shows that I listen to. I got to give a shout out to my friend David Spisak. I really enjoy his show.
He has a great show.
The David Spisak Show. I mean, if you're in the auto industry, listen to his show. I've had him on the podcast, and it was I knew it was going to be a good conversation. But I said at the end of it, I was like, oh, this was so good because he was
Yeah.
saying all the things that
Yeah.
people tend to tiptoe around, but he just says them, which
No,
is
he's on my list to
what.
get on. He's on my list to get on here.
Yeah.
He's a a great person to have because he speaks very intelligently, but not over your head, which I really like.
Yes, yes, and so relatable. No jargon. This is what it is. A plus B equals C.
Hmm.
So really, really enjoy David's show. And then, I'm also like just really, I'm really enjoying some of the Seth, like the old school, like Seth Godin
Yep.
kind of content.
Hmm.
And so I kind of jump between like some YouTube content that he does. There's a couple of books that he also has. I think I'm going to get the title wrong, even though I'm reading it. It's Survival is Not Enough. It's kind
Right.
of an older
Hmm.
Seth Godin, but it's definitely like an OG. I love his perspective on marketing and leadership. And I also attended this conference. It was not an automotive conference, which was actually quite refreshing.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I love automotive conferences, but it was cool to, try something different. So it was at Wharton, it was at the Mac Institute of Innovation, and it was all about actually corporate venturing, which I know nothing about. I know nothing about corporate venturing. So I thought
Right.
this is an interesting topic to learn more about. And, they were talking about, had someone from Microsoft there talking about innovation and AI. Had somebody from GM Ventures,
Right.
which I'm fingers crossed, hopefully going to get onto the show to talk about electric vehicles and mobility. Again, touching on that mobility topic. So I know that's technically not a like podcast or
No, but that's
book,
inspiring because that
but
allows you to go outside of what you know. Go to other conferences, listen to other disciplines, learn. That seems interesting, and just follow your gut. All right, number two. Let's see, which order do I want to? Okay, I'll ask this one first. Uh, Everybody's life, like you said it earlier, there's always some sort of common theme in your life or a trait. I always tell people, if I take away your titles, is there a common thread through your life? But what I'm curious about is, I'm always curious about the 16, 17-year-old person because my kids are in that age.
oh,
If that person looked at you now, what would they be the most surprised about?
that I wasn't a professional dancer with New York City Ballet.
That was your
Yeah,
goal.
that was my goal. I'm being 100% dead serious,
That's
and I love
great.
this question. I love this question so much. I'll tell a quick story. So my whole life, prior to like all the way up through college, I was a ballet dancer. I actually danced professionally with Pennsylvania Ballet before it was Philadelphia Ballet. And I went to Marymount Manhattan College. I majored in dance, and it was senior year. All of the like Alvin Ailey, New York City Ballet, American Ballet Theater were all there scouting. It was senior year, last semester. Came down from a jump, tore my Achilles. I was on
Ugh.
crutches. I thought my life was over. I thought like my entire life up until that point, what was I, 22, 23, 23 years, literally out of the womb dancing, performing on stage, which probably also makes sense in the whole like,
I wonder. I
I
wonder. I wonder why.
wonder why, right?
Scratch that
So
itch.
so I thought, well, I'm done. I went to school for dance. I don't know how to do anything else. And so I had to figure out, who am I? What is my identity without this?
Right.
Because at that point, it's like, well, you missed your chance to audition. And then, like, yeah, I did do some auditions here and there, but it ended up always not working out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why? What am I doing wrong? Why doesn't, and you kind of go through this whole existential thing. And then from there, I had to make a living some way because I was broke. Okay, dancer in New York City, had to move back to Jersey. Like I was so broke. I would take like, I ended up being a personal trainer at this gym, and I ended up really enjoying fitness training. And so I started my own personal training company. I ran that for 10 years. So that's where the entrepreneur, like bootstrapping, scrappy, no resources, figure out how to make money. That the genesis of that happened. So back to your original question, what 16-year-old Elena would think, they would be like, man, you're not in New York
Yeah,
City
but
ballet.
look at all the cool
What
things
happened?
you're doing now.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I said, look at all the cool things you're doing now, though.
It is. Yeah.
Listen, I was an actor for a long time, so I understand exactly.
Right.
I was,
so you get it.
Broke and working in restaurants and hustling and doing all of that. All right, last question. Because you're a fellow New Jerseyan, and I hope this question makes sense, is it Taylor ham or pork roll?
Pork roll.
Thank you.
Pork roll.
It's pork roll. Pork roll, egg and cheese. For all of you people who are not from New Jersey, you have no idea what we're talking about, but it's the best thing you'll ever have. So
it is delicious. And by the way, you better go get yourself some water ice. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, listen, she's down in the south. And that's one thing. Once I moved, I used to live up in more northern New Jersey, and I moved down to Lawrenceville, where I am now. And all of a sudden I started seeing all these Philadelphia Eagles and Phillies, and I was like, what? And up north we're Giants, and my son came home from school. I think he was either first or second grade, goes, I think I'm going to be an Eagles fan. I said, I think you have to move out of the house if you're going to have to do that. So
oh no,
but that's all right.
The line was drawn.
The line was drawn, but that's okay. We appreciate Philly. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed getting to. So tell everybody, and I'll link them in the show notes, but tell everybody how to connect with you online, where to find you, where to find the podcast, and anything else you'd like to share.
Sure. So the easiest way is LinkedIn. The link will be in the show notes. Connect with me there. Send me a DM. And also, if you go and connect with the EVs for Everyone community on LinkedIn, that's always being updated with new episodes and just really, I think, fun content. And then we're also going to be, Savannah Sims and I are going to be opening up very soon, depending upon when this airs, our Amped community, which is going to be a very focused community of really amazing dealers throughout the country and this EV vendor ecosystem that's happening. And we're going to be on a Slack channel. We're going to be sharing ideas, brainstorming solutions, really a lot of cool, fun things happening there. So that's going to be coming up later in April. But the best thing, you go listen to the show on Apple, on Spotify. Just type in EVs for Everyone podcast and it'll pop up.
There you go. We'll make sure all of that's in the show notes. Again, thank you so much for being here. Audience, you know the drill. Make sure, if you love this type of content, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a nice review. Give us a nice big heart. We appreciate that. But more importantly, please share this episode out. I know there's a lot of people in your network that would benefit from what Elena and I talked about today. I appreciate the fact that you're here. There's a lot of places for you to watch content, listen to content. The fact you spend time with Elena and me means the world. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but now Elena and I have given you a few more tools in your toolkit to help you become the leader you want to be. Look forward to seeing you next week. We are here every single week. And Elena, I look forward to meeting you in person in a couple weeks. That's going to be exciting.
It's going to be amazing. Thank you, Glenn. This was awesome.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. Take care, everyone. See you next week.